The user story we got this time is a volunteer application. As a volunteer, I would like to apply to available volunteer opportunities. The acceptance criteria is that given a supporter who has shown interest in volunteer opportunities through some means like events, in-person meetings, social marketing, whatever it is, at the end of the day, some supporter has visited our website on which there is a button or like maybe that was a marketing email. We managed to redirect that supporter to a public experience cloud site where we have a volunteer application, and on that public page they will be presented with an application that's basically a screen flow, and then they go through that application. What is included in that application? We're going to need to collect the first name, last name, email, and that's all the information we're going to get as part of this recording. You could definitely add more if you wish. So we're going to need to do some build first before we actually go ahead and build the flow, and it's part of the job to think about the architecture and the data modeling before you actually build anything. And for a volunteer application or any application, I would lean towards creating a custom object for this to capture the initial information. So at the time this application was submitted, you would want to know when the application was submitted, the email at the time it was submitted, if there is more information that you are collecting at the time of submission, what it was, and so on. And from that application, you could create the contact right away, and you could add some field at the contact level saying that like date of application or something like this. But you will be limited with the information that you can have. Additionally, things might change later on, like this person's email might change. If there is some other information about that person, might change later on. In order to keep history of the information, then we need the information at the time of the application in a separate place in a volunteer application custom object, and then the contact data could change later on just fine. We know the initial information. So let's go ahead and do that pre-build first. I'm already taking notes since we already have a bunch of things that we need to do. So we need to create the custom object. We need to create the fields of that custom object, set up the lightning page of that custom object, because we're going to create a lookup to the contact. Then we need to update the contact page layout to make sure that this related list is showing up as well. We'll then publish an experience cloud site, create a public page, add the flow to that public page, and then test that flow on that public page. Let's start with the custom object. We're going to go to setup. This is a bunch of admin stuff, so we might try to go through this fairly quickly, hopefully. Object manager, create custom object, volunteer application, and I'll set this to auto number, volunteer application dash is it like this as far as I remember? I'll just add month here, another dash, then another dash, and then let's start with one, allowing everything. Select some form. I think there is a form here. Next, let's okay, keep it just on to everyone, and okay, just like add the tab everywhere. This is not the best thing. I would typically just make it only visible where it needs to be added to profiles where people will want to see it. So you always want to go with a minimalist least privilege, not just like what we did. Let's add a few fields. We know that we need to have a first name. Last name. And we need last name. We need email. We need application status. So I'm going to go with checklist and status. Let's add draft, in progress, submitted, completed, or maybe approved. And the last thing we need is a lookup to the contact object. Contact. We'll name this applicant. Next, and save. Let's go to a lightning page. You know, I mean, maybe let's just volunteer applications. Needs a minute. There it is. Let's just attempt a new one. All right, we got the information we need. Let's save. You might want to make some stuff required. You know, I'm happy with this page. Let's not just make any edits to the page. Let's just make sure that on the contact object, we get to see the related list of applications. Okay. Okay, let's edit this page. This is definitely a lightning page. And we have dynamic related lists. We'll add this there. I'll say we need volunteer applications. And that's it. So we are done with the pre-configuration. We actually need to build the flow itself. Why is it add an account relationship? Volunteer applications. There. Okay, now we are ready to build the flow itself. We're gonna go to setup. We're gonna go to flows, and we will start a new flow. Start from scratch. Select screen flow. And then we're gonna start collecting information now. So the first thing, I'm gonna add a screen element. This is where we need to collect input from the user. So this is information screen. Again, I typically add the word screen because you might want to use this keyword elsewhere. And if you use it in one API name in the flow, you can't use it elsewhere. So just to make it distinct, I typically hide the header, and I wanna add any a display text at the top to tell me the information that we need. I typically name display text with, see, now I'm using the word information again, and I can't use if I have named the screen information, I couldn't use the word information here. And I'm also adding display text at the beginning here, so that if I still need to use the word information elsewhere, I could, without any prefix or suffix. here we'll say volunteer information. For the footer, I'm just going to, I clicked outside so that I get back to the screen properties, and then I want to hide pause, and I want to hide previous. It's only one screen that we have. Now we need to collect some information. We have a bunch of input fields to the left side here. You can add, there is text if you want to collect something like a first name. If you want to collect something like a lot of text, you can use the long text area. There is also, you can add a field, you can add an email, you can use the name input, which automatically adds first name and last name. Let's actually use that and name component. Let's say this is name. Looking at these things, do we get to have display more than just first name and last name? So this to comment the notes. Field names are first name, middle name, last name, informal name, suffix, and salutation. It's just name related. Okay, and all right. So this is the name. We need to also collect the email. So we'll add the email input down here, and then we'll name this email. That's all the information that we need from the volunteer. And let's, in the footer here, let's change this finish from saying finish to say submit. Under configure footer, you can use a custom label, and then let's say submit. So it's going to say submit instead. Let's click done. Now that we have the screen, we collected the information on the screen. We need to send that information from the screen to the custom object. So there is a couple of ways to do this. You can do create application right away. So we're going to use create volunteer application. Let's use this way, and then in a future video we can use it. We are definitely using a different way. And then how to set record field values for that create volunteer application. We're going to select manually. This is going to allow us to select the object, and then we'll select volunteer application. And now we're ready to fill these names. If I click here, it's going to show me all the available fields that we could fill. If I select first name and then add another, first name doesn't show up in here anymore. The rest of the fields are showing up, so we're going to add all of them. Okay. First name is going to be the first name from the screen, and we named it name. That's the name of the component, and inside that we will have first name. So this is like a component that has inputs or parts inside that component. So I needed to access the component itself first, and then the first name inside that component. And then I'll repeat this for last name, for name, and then last name. For the email, we've got the email already on the screen, so you need to access the screen in the next release. I believe you can just type email, or we already have it. So we can access the email value. So the email is the component itself. It might have other things like other information you need from the component, but we need the value of the email here. And then the status, it's automatically picking up the statuses that are available. We'll set this to submitted. One thing you might do if you have a larger application and multiple screens, you can create the application right away at the beginning or after the very first screen, and you set the status to draft. And then after each screen, you update the volunteer application just in case some volunteer in the middle of the application, stops and leaves. We already have some of the information that they submitted, so that we can probably connect with them to see the reason they are not interested anymore. So that if there is a problem with the application, if the application is too long, if they showed interest, but then because of the application, if they faced an error, something like this, then we would know that there is a problem that we need to fix and fix it. Do you have any other fields? We need the applicant. So in order to do to fill the applicant, we need to create the applicant first. So before the create volunteer application, you see there are things that you only figure out during the build. So I need here to create the contact first, create applicant first. And I'm going to select manually. I'll select the contact object. And in this release, it automatically populates the fields that are required. So we need the last name. Let's also add first name. What am I doing? Name, first name, and then email. That's going to be email. Why is it not allowing me to know? Email. Let me save for a second. This is the volunteer application. Let's see why the email, it doesn't like that. I'll just refresh and see if it's a flow builder thingy. Sometimes we have bugs. Okay, so we need email here. Now, probably we don't have a value that let's try the different way that I was saying, that we could assign values to a record and then create it into the database. So I'm going to create a variable. I'll create record variable underscore contact. So that's the contact of the contact object. Now this is an empty variable. This is a record in the flow. We haven't sent it to the database yet. And then we can assign values to this one here. So we're going to assign contact for applicant. So we're going to access that variable and then first name. And then we're going to put name, first name here. Now let's try email. Let's see if that works here. And then email value. Okay, and then we have last name equals name, last name. Now, I don't like to add the email in the middle like this. You would expect the last name to be after the first name, so you might want to edit that. And here, we're gonna change this from manually. We're not doing this here because we already did this in the assignment. We'll change this to from a record variable, and we'll select that variable that we created earlier. Now, the sequence of events, we created a variable, a contact variable. That contact variable is a record in the flow. It doesn't exist in the database yet. And then when we assign these values, we take the first name from the screen and we put it into the variable first name. We are updating the values of this record in the flow. It's not in the database yet. And what we're doing here is that we're taking that variable, that record, with the updated values from the assignment, and we're sending all of these to the database. Go ahead and create that contact. Now that we created the contact, after this transaction completes, the contact ID is going to be stored into this record variable ID. So if I go into this create volunteer application, here I have I want the applicant ID, and that's gonna be the record variable contact ID. Contact ID. Contact ID in the flow, it doesn't exist yet because the contact hasn't been created yet. But once this transaction is committed, then the contact gets created. The contact ID gets stored in this in the variable contact ID, and then you can take that value and you put it into the applicant. Okay, so we've got everything, I believe. Let's click save. Okay, now before we activate, it's a screen flow, so we can go ahead and click debug, which is going to run, and then we can test it this way before we actually add it to an Experience Cloud site. Let's click debug. Right now, this is what it looks like. This is the URL. I'll just run it right now, right away. This is the URL. This is what it looks like. We have the debug details to the right side. We will add this left side here to an Experience Cloud site in a minute, but for now, let's just test to make sure that we built is good. Let's say delta.com. Gotta be very creative, you know. And then submit. Okay. This has been submitted successfully. We're gonna look at the logs in a second. Let's go to volunteer applications. Volunteer applications. Okay, and let's pin this. This is the one. We've got delta, 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 and then the applicant got created, delta, delta. Do we have the email here correctly? We've got the email here just fine, and then we have the email here just fine. So everything is behaving as expected. Let's look at the logs quickly. So this is the information on the screen. This is the assignment, and in the assignment we're saying take the first name from the name component and put it into the first name on the contact variable, and the result is here. So this is how you know, like, what's the value of the name first name, you see it here. What's the value of email value, you see it here. What's the value of name last name, you see it here. And then you know that these values got assigned to these fields in this record variable. And then create applicant, that's the element. Now this line here is the part where we said the ID is going to be available after the transaction. It says all records are ready to be created when the next screen, pause, or local action is executed, or when the interview finishes. And if you remember, every screen ends a transaction. So that's why it says when the next screen, there is no next screen, but the flow has ended. So the flow interview finished, the transaction has completed. So the create applicant got created, and we have an ID, and that ID got stored into the contact ID, and you see it's showing up here. And then the flow has created the volunteer application. So the volunteer application is now looking good. It's working. Let's activate this. It would be a good idea to add like a success screen here. Let's do that quickly. Success screen. You almost always want to add some communicate with the end user. Hide previous. And I want to hide this as well. I'll add the display text. Display text underscore success. And just add the word success here. Saving as a new version and activating. Okay, let's do some more admin work. Let's go to setup. We're just now like we're done building the flow. We need to publish the Experience Cloud site. So I'm gonna search for digital experiences. The fact that I see these here, it means it's already activated, the digital experiences. I'll go to all sites. There is already one here. Let's use it. I'll go to builder. I'll create a new page. Standard page, flexible layout. I'll say this is volunteer application. Let's create this. And I want to like I click this page properties on the volunteer application, and I want to set this page to public here, public page. And we need to add the flow here. So the flow component here. And we need to select volunteer application. Let's publish this. Got it. Let's try to preview this as an authenticated user. I don't think the flow would run anyway in the authenticate. Yeah, it wouldn't. Okay. Now that we should receive an email that it is published, and then I want to navigate to this URL now. So I'll just open a new private window here, and I'll just move it to the site for a second. This is the site URL, and then I want to grab the page URL. That's the page URL. So I'm just going to open this here. I put the site URL first. I think there's a /s that gets added automatically, right? And then it takes me to the login page because it's like the site requires login, but that particular page, if I navigate to it, it does not require login because it's a public page. Okay, it's not showing up because of I'm certain it's a permission thing. Let's go ahead and address that permission side of things. To do that, so before we used to have a permission called run flows that you needed to give to the user to be able to run flows, but now it is granular. You need to give access to flows for each profile independently. So we're gonna go to the flows list view. You can do that from the profile. I'll just do it from here. I will go to volunteer application. I'll click edit access. So from the arrow drop down there is edit access, and I'll click override default behavior here, and I want the guest user. So if when it's public, the type of user that's accessing is the guest user. Customer community, where is the guest user? Looks like you can do it from here. Okay, from the Experience Cloud site itself, and go back to Builder and then Settings, and then where is it? It's here. Grant Seeker Profile. I'll save this. And Grant Seeker Profile, I want to go to flow access. There it is. And I'll edit this, and I'll add that volunteer application here so that a guest user gets to have access. Grabbing this back here, refreshing, just troubleshooting now to see if this works. It shows up. Let's I feel like we might face an error. Let's see. Let's create Bravo this time. Bravo at bravo.com, and then submit. Okay, that must be if you want to guess, I mean, we are creating two things. We're creating a volunteer application and we're creating a contact. Does that user have access to these two objects? Do they have create access on these two objects? Potentially not. So I assume that's the error. Let's see. Yeah, so like this is very likely the permission. When it says invalid type is object type, contact is not supported, it's like it's not supported for this user. Like this user doesn't have access to it, so the system's like that thing doesn't exist for that user. So it's very likely that this is a create permission that's not granted to that user. And there is two ways to do this. You could go to the grant seeker profile here and then give them create access at the contact level and create access at the volunteer application level. And I'm hesitant to do that in case someone finds ways to manipulate the API or some URL, and then they would be able to create contacts and volunteer applications. And instead, another way, which is an easier way, is to make this flow bypass object level security, which also has its own risks, and we'll have to choose one of those two poisons, I guess. I would rather choose allow access through the flow, because they can create more contacts, but it's always going to be through this flow and nothing else. So to do that from the flow itself, you can go to the properties here and then show advanced, and under how to run the flow you can set it to system context with sharing. We can talk about this further later on, but very quickly right now. If you select access all data, it's going to bypass two things, the object level security and the record level security. If you set it to enforce record level access, it's going to bypass object level security only and field level security by definition. And then it's just going to enforce the record level access only. So let's set it to enforce record level access only. Save it as a new version. Activate. Let's go back here. Let's refresh. Let's do the same thing again. Bravo. And submit. Okay, we got another error. Let's see what we have. Okay. Insufficient access rights on cross-reference ID. That ID is that the contact. Like, does it create the contact and then the user doesn't have access to the contact, which means it's also record level. It doesn't exist. All right, my assumption here is that the flow has gone ahead and created the contact. The user doesn't have access to the contact because of the record level security being enforced. So let's change this to access all data, so that when the contact gets created and now we need to access that contact to grab the contact ID and use it on the volunteer application, it doesn't stop the user from accessing that contact. That's record level security there. Let's now give this an attempt. Where is it? Okay, Bravo. Bravo.com. All right, we've got the success. It seems that my assumptions were right. So like if I click finish, it will just reload and then start over. Let's look at this data in Salesforce. Let's go to volunteer applications. We've got the third application here. That's Bravo with the emails. That's the applicant. And then with the name and the email. Reviewing the notes here, we created the public page, we added the flow, we tested the flow, it's working fine, all is good. That was quite a journey.